Hi guys, I'm Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you my 17 favourites of 2017. So the year is practically almost finished and I have read quite a few books this year. I'm filming this on the 30th of December and I've read 106 books so far this year, which is great because I try and average out at 100 books a year. Hopefully try to finish one more book before the new year and that will bring me up to 107. So that's how many books I read this year, but of course I have some favourites. If it's a favourite, it doesn't necessarily mean I rated it 5 out of 5 stars, maybe 4 out of 5 stars. But if I'm putting it in this video, it's because it's had a lasting impression on me and it's a book that I think other people might want to read and I remember it, which is always a key thing when it comes to reading. So let me give you my 17 favourites. I'm cheating a little bit because some of them are series and I just include the whole series rather than pick one favourite out of the series, but you know what I mean. Let's get down to it. Okay, so one of the first books that I read in January was Winter by Marissa Meyer. This is the final book in the Lunar Chronicles series. The Lunar Chronicles are retellings of fairy tales and Winter is the Snow White retelling, but it's kind of the conclusion of the series where everything goes down. One of my favourite villains of all time is in this book and I just love the couples, the characters, how much energy, how it's sci-fi slash adventure slash contemporary romance, and it's just all so good. For book number 2, I'm putting This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. I don't know how you pronounce that last name. I haven't read the sequel to this book even though it came out this year yet, but I did really enjoy This Savage Song. The beginning is a little bit slow paced, but after that it picks up right away, and this is a world set in a world where monsters are real and they are created when somebody does something evil. So if, for example, you do something bad, or you know, like you steal from someone or you murder someone, a shadow forms from your body and that shadow can turn into a monster. And there are two main characters. There's Kate, and Kate's father is somebody who runs this monster world and makes profit out of it, and then there's also August, who is a monster himself trying to do good. So you get these two characters, their interaction, and a whole load of stuff goes down and it makes for one absolutely amazing book. Okay, for the third book I'm choosing He Will Be My Ruin by K.A. Tucker. This was my first K.A. Tucker book that I read, and she kind of writes mystery thrillers and heard so much about how good her books are, and He Will Be My Ruin was the first one I read and I absolutely loved it. I didn't know who had committed the murder, and the main character is trying to investigate who committed the murder because the police believe it to be suicide, and as she does her investigation she kind of gets caught up in the whole thing. There are some explicit scenes, but you know what, it's really, really good. Okay, moving on to my fourth book, which is another adult book, and it's called It Happens All the Time by Amy Hatvarni. And this one is written by someone who has experienced sexual assault herself before. This book is about two best friends, and what happens is one of the best friend rapes the other best friend. But you don't only get the female's point of view, you get both points of view, and you also, because they're best friends, you get their backstory, what leads up to it, how it happens, how it all ends out. And I was really pulled in different directions with these emotions because, you know, I could feel for the character who committed the rape and I could feel for the character who was raped, and almost like I've never experienced before. And this book was also very important because there's a large percentage of sexual assault victims and most of them end up knowing or have known the person who sexually assaults them. So it's not like a stranger that does it, it's someone that they know in real life, that they could be friends with, that's, you know, like a friend's father or just things like that. And I think this one raises awareness on a lot of topics. It really deals with this controversial subject, and I think it's something that, you know, a lot of people should read. For number 5, I have Sunset Park and Interborough by Santino Hassel. If you've been following my channel or read my blog, you know that I have gone Santino Hassel crazy this year, but what I didn't realise was that previous to this year I'd only read 2 of his books. This year is the year that I read all of his books, almost all the works that he's ever published. Sunset Park and Interborough follow two main characters, Raymond and David, and they're one of my favourite couples. His series, this is the 5 Boroughs series, is almost over. It's going to be ending next year, and it's an new adult romance series. It's contemporary romance, but it deals with a lot of dark themes and representation of LGBT and I just think Santino Hassel is a brilliant writer. He writes the best romances, the best new adult, and I absolutely loved reading this series. And Interborough has such a cute scene for people who read the 5 Hours series. You've just got to read this one. Number 6, we're going back to classics. This year I also read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I absolutely loved it. It's about 2 sisters. You know Jane Austen stories. It's a romance, and I just think it was such a cute story. I love the romance, I love the sisters, and I loved how I actually didn't think a Jane Austen book was going to have a happily ever after, because I was like, how is this going to work out? But you'll see when you read the book, and I really liked Sense and Sensibility. Okay, for number 7, we're going back to the new adult genre. I really did a lot of adult fiction and new adult reading this year, and usually I stick to young adults, so this is kind of surprising me for my favourite list. But For Real by Alexis Hall. This was the first Alexis Hall book I read, and this is actually a BDSM romance, and that's just something that's not really my type of read, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's also a bit controversial. Well, it's controversial if this is your opinion that it shouldn't be, but there's a huge age gap between the 2 romance interests, so that was also interesting, along with the BDSM. Okay, the 8th book that I read was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This is a young adult fiction, historical fiction, romance kind of book about Monty, and he is someone who's in love with his best friend Percy. He's bisexual, and he's kind of really selfish, kind of really all about himself, but he actually does love his best friend, and he actually does want the best for his best friend, but he's kind of selfish and he can't really see past himself, and they end up going on this whole kind of adventure quest together, and loads of stuff goes down. There's LGBT plus themes in historical fiction, which is just something I don't see often, and then Monty's got this really cool sister, Felicia, who is all about feminism. She doesn't want to sit at home sewing or whatever, she wants to study science. So you've got really historical fiction that's done well and accurate, but it's also got some really modern themes that mostly you only see set in present day, but these themes did start occurring in history, so it's great to see that in historical fiction for the young adult genre as well, and it was just written so great. I loved it, flew through it, brilliant book. And for number 9, maybe it's my favourite read. This is the In the Company of Shadows series by Santino Hassel and Ice. It was amazing. This one is something you can read online for free because it's unedited, but even though I say it's unedited, it's mostly because first it was posted online in chapters, and it's not like bad editing or grammar mistakes or anything. It's about Sin and Boyd, another new adult series, but this one is full of action and it's got a really good storyline to it. It's set in the future, but not really the future anymore because it's kind of written in the past, and it's set in the future, and it's this agency of spies and assassins, and Sin is this crazy assassin who's practically a monster, and Boyd is this, not a spy, but he's been assigned to be Sin's partner, and he doesn't know anything about the spy world, and he's kind of thrown into the world of manipulation, sex and violence, and he just has to kind of catch up, and Sin is just this crazy amazing assassin that he has to deal with as well as that. And I just think the whole series is brilliant. It's so intense. I don't think I've ever read a love story where the romance gets as intense as theirs. I read the whole series in the summer, and then I reread the whole series, and then I reread the whole series again, so that's how brilliant it is. And moving on to another favourite, it's the Cyber Love series by Megan Erickson, and guess who? Santino Hassel. This one is again new adult romance, where these people all meet online or through games or something electrical like that. So for example, in the first book they meet through a video game, and then in another one they meet through comic conventions and just things that are like to do with the cyber world. You get it, the Cyber Love series. Each story is very unique. Each story has a new cute amazing couple that I ship like crazy, and they just keep getting better and more unique, and they're a brilliant pair of authors writing together, and I just love reading their books. I fly through those books in a day or a night, and they're just a brilliant series. Then for 11, we're moving back to the young adult genre, and that's Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This is a historical fiction to do with one of the greatest marine disasters in history, but that is unfortunately not as well known as the marine disaster of Titanic. So she's really going to the greatest one in history, which is set during World War II. I believe she uses 4 points of view, and all these 4 points of view are told from different perspectives of different people in the war. But basically, in the end, you're rooting for all these characters to survive, and they all end up on this big boat. And as I said, it's the greatest marine disaster in history. you know that boat is going to go down. A boat full of not soldiers or people who are paying to go, but a boat full, overflowing to the brim with refugees and people who are just trying to survive the war, citizens. And I just thought it was a brilliantly written but heartbreaking book and a moment in history that a lot of people need to know more about. The 12th one, and that is A Song to Take the World Apart by San Romanoff. Now this is a contemporary romance, young adult, where this girl has been told that she can never sing, never to use her voice in public, and her house is basically a silent house where everyone's tiptoeing once over each other, but what she doesn't know is that her voice has the power to cast a spell on somebody if she sings to them. So it's kind of like a siren, you know, the mythological creature, the siren, is brought into modern day life and is put into a teenager, and she doesn't quite know that she actually has this power. Her parents have just told her not to sing. But she falls in love and she starts singing. The next book that is on my favourite list it's just a poet. She's called Mary Stone Dockery and she's written 2 collections. One is The Mythology of Touch and the other is Aching Buttons. And both of those collections are really short. They're like chapbooks of poetry. But you guys, if you want to read beautiful, beautiful, romantic, but also at the same time very deep and also grieving poetry, I would really read Mary Stone Dockery. I highly recommend her books. I don't know where you can get them because I actually got these 2 collections for free. I'm going to try and find somewhere and link them down below. I'll try and link down all the books in this favourite list down below. But her writing and poetry is so beautiful. I highly recommend it. Really, really recommend it. The next book on my list is The Lonely Londoners by Sam Selvon. This is actually one that I've read for my English literature course, and it's a classic, but I thought it was just so good. It's written by a Caribbean author, and he is basically writing about the time period where basically lots of black men from the Caribbean islands and some black women moved to London, and there was a great migrational period where that was happening a lot. And basically it's about these Londoners who have come overseas and they're in their motherland because Jamaica was a colony of Britain, and they're trying to find jobs, trying to find their own way, but people are saying, oh, why are these immigrants coming over to our country? There's not enough space, they're taking all our jobs. And basically things that a lot of people are saying these days with the whole Brexit issue and migrants and immigrants needing somewhere to stay after, you know, us as a colony, Britain has gone and, you know, taken over their countries, ruined their countries, etc, etc. So I believe that this book, even though it's written and set in history, has a lot of ties to the modern day and is very relevant today, and I could just see all of those parallels and see how important this book is, and I think that more people should read it even if you're not going to be studying it. I had a blast studying it, so I've put it on this favourites list because I actually really enjoyed reading it. Brilliant book. Moving on to the last 3 books, 2 of them are from my course again. One of them is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Even though I read this for my course, I really wanted to read Frankenstein for a long time, and I absolutely loved reading the original. I just enjoyed it so much. I read it in a couple of days, mostly because I had to read it and I was kind of a bit behind schedule, but it was actually brilliant. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed seeing the original story of the monster, and you know, Frankenstein isn't the monster's name. Frankenstein is not who creates it. Frankenstein's monster doesn't actually have a name. And I think it tells you a lot about what it means to be human and what it means to be different and the struggles that that brings, as well as, you know, being a classic story. And aside from that, the next one that was a favourite was a play. I've read a lot of plays this year, and that is A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. This is a Norwegian play translated into English, and it was written in like 1800s, but it's so relevant still today because it's about, the beginning is a bit slow, but then it's about feminism, and a woman doesn't just have to be a mother, she can be someone who understands the world and has her own education and does her own things. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending at that time period was seen as so outrageous that they asked the playwright to write a second ending where everything ended happily ever after. He wasn't very happy about it, but he kind of had to do it. But mostly if you buy a copy now you get both endings, the original ending and then they're like alternative ending if you want it. But I think the original book, the original play, it just has so many relevant themes, and the ending is just modern and mind-blowing and still so relevant. And then the last book that makes it to my favourites list is Last Chance by Greg Hurwitz. I've got a review for this one, so I'm going to link that down below. It's actually the final book in a duology, young adult, teen, action, zombie adventure kind of thing. And even though, you know, it's kind of such an action book and so plot driven, I think the character story is done brilliantly as well. People were dying off and I was like, please don't die, because I absolutely did want none of them to die, and it was just so good, kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time, major suspense, and written so well and so cleverly. Okay, so that's all my 17 favourites for 2017. Even though there were other books I loved, they didn't show up on this list. I'm going to link down below to my monthly wrap-up index page and my monthly wrap-up playlist. So if you want to see all my wrap-ups for this past year so far, excluding December of course, or if you want to go onto my blog and see all my 2017 wrap-ups, you can see basically all 106 books that I've read so far, and you can check that that's an accurate number if you don't believe me. Okay, it's a bit of a long video, 17 books, what can I say? But please let me know in the comment section below what was one of your favourite books of 2017. I am looking for recommendations so that I can have some more favourites on my 2018 list. Thanks so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and hit that notification bell if you want to be updated every time I have a new video. Happy New Year to all of you, and my next video will be in 2018. Goodbye!